Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Kurt Visnick. I'm up here in beautiful North Dakota, and I'm a chiropractor. I've been doing chiropractic work for 30 years now, and I got into anti-aging medicine. Actually, it started out as a necessity. My son was diagnosed with asthma, and I needed to find a way of getting rid of it because the doctors, the traditional medical doctors around the area, all they could tell me was, well, have him take this inhaler and maybe he'll outgrow it. And if you're a parent, I know you have the same thoughts that I do. That's not good enough. You know, maybe he'll outgrow it. No, I didn't accept that. And I decided I was going to keep going until I found something that worked. And it took me a while. I was just really new to that part of things, you know, chiropractic. We knew that. That's been going on for 100 years. And I was selected as one of America's top chiropractors in 2004. I mean, if you had neck pain, back pain, anything like that, you know, I knew what I was doing. But the asthma, I really had to study that. And from there, it branched out. Then it seemed like, you know, everybody started having weird diseases. And my mom was diagnosed with colon cancer. And then my dad got prostate cancer. And then he got lymphoma. And then my dad got thyroid disease. And my mom got heart disease. And I'm going, holy cow, what am I going to do? So I really started studying it. So that's really how I got into what I'm doing. And then 10 years ago, August 27th, 2007, I was out for a ride in my Harley, and some guy, you know, he ran a stop sign, hit me at about 65 miles an hour, and nearly killed me. I spent 2 months in a hospital. I was in a coma for a while. I lost a couple of days of my life that I don't remember at all, and then when I did come to, then they said they were going to cut my right leg off, and they said if I didn't have it cut off and I'd get a prosthetic, I'd probably never walk again. And so then, you know, the necessity was myself, because I decided that, you know, I wasn't going to be like a pirate and have one leg and have a peg leg on the other side. So I got myself fixed up too. I kept my leg, and that 2 years in a wheelchair gave me some time to really think about life and things like that, and that's what I want to talk about this morning. And I got my friend Andrea from up in Michigan. She's not a Youper. I just found that out. She's not a Youper, and she's not a Flatlander either. But Andrea, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Give us your story a little bit. You know, how did you get into this thing? How did you get into all this natural anti-aging quackery that we do?
Well, I've always been interested in health, and I went to a major university to, you know, get a minor in health, and it's just been a lifelong process of acquiring information, I guess, but really what spurred it to really expand in my world was about 6 years ago, I started learning about toxins and how dangerous they are and what they do to the body and how they prevent the body from healing itself. And since then, it's just been, you know, and the expansion of Facebook, you know, you can get all this information right at your fingertips and YouTube. And I just kind of self-educate myself with new information. And I just kind of have a passion for it.
There you go. Yeah, and that's how you and I really connected, was with when we were learning, both of us learned about toxins together, and then really reconnected on Facebook.
Correct.
You know, and this morning I made a post. You know, I treat a lot of people over the age of 70, some 80-year-olds. I've even got a couple 90-year-olds. I got a 96-year-old patient that I work on. And you know, Andrea, one of the things that I ask people all the time is I ask them the question, you know, at your age, what's the worst thing that bothers you? If you could get rid of one health problem, and I mean, even for us like you and I that are, you know, young yet and we're middle-aged, you know, if you could get rid of one health problem, I could wave a magic wand over the top of you and say, boom, it's gone, abracadabra, it's gone. You know, what would you want to come back? What would you want to go away? And these elderly people, a lot of times, they tell me that, if they could have one thing happen with a magic wand, they'd like to have some of their friends come back, because here they are in their 80s and 90s, and they're hanging out with people they don't know. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I've heard that from, like, my own grandmother before. She said her social life was going to funerals.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you think about that, like my 96-year-old that I take care of, he and I were talking, and he got into natural organic in 1954.
Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, think about that. Yeah, 1954. I mean, really, from what I remember, I mean, I was born in the 60s, 62. I mean, of course, I was a kid then, but what was the word organic even invented yet?
I don't think so. I used to teach childbirth classes back in the 80s, and we used to tell our expectant mothers to not change cat litter, because you get that disease that has a really long name that I've forgotten, and also to stay away from fertilizer. And those were the only precautions that we talked about back then. We didn't have all this knowledge about toxins and stuff.
Oh God, I remember in the 70s, one of my jobs, when it's been since 1980 since I had a job, right? Since 1980, I've never worked for anybody. I've always been an entrepreneur working for myself. But back in the 70s, I had a job working for a farmer while I was in high school, so after school and then the summers. And I'd be out there mixing this chemical called Treflan. And I don't even know if it's still used today. I'm sure it's not, been replaced by some new chemical. But I'd be out there mixing this stuff up, big barrels of this stuff, 50, 60-gallon barrels of it. And I didn't have any rubber gloves on. I didn't have a mask on. None of that stuff, Andrea. And I'd go home and my hands would be yellow.
Oh, yeah. Back then, nobody even thought about that stuff.
Right.
My husband and I built our first house in 1975, and it was a brand new thing then to use urethane foam insulation. And it wasn't the safer insulation that they have nowadays. It was the very high potent, poisonous combination of chemicals. In fact, my husband was spraying that for a guy who had the company, and he'd come home with little bits of spray foam insulation all over him, and we put it in our first house. He didn't tell me until, we'd lived there a while. He says, oh, by the way, if our house ever catches on fire, you have like 7 seconds to get out of it. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, like the fumes will kill you in about 7 seconds if it burns. And I went, great.
Wow.
And I used to have this excellent memory, and we lived in that house for probably 4 years. And I pretty much lost my memory living in that house. And I'm sure it was from all the, negative energy of living in the foam, surrounded by the foam, all my walls and ceilings and everything. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure it had a huge impact on my thinking ability.
But you had low heating bills.
We sure did. We wore shorts all summer. All winter.
All winter. Wow. And so that's the price we pay. And really, from the 50s on, when we really came up, because most of the chemicals that we use today that are used, it really started in the 1950s is when we went, chemistry and science and we can make things easier, microwave ovens and all that. Did you know how they invented microwave ovens?
I don't.
So they were sitting around with these components that they used to make radar, and I actually think it was a guy from Michigan, a scientist from Michigan, and they were sitting around with this stuff, and he had made all these radar equipment, and then the war ended, World War II ended, and so he's got like this stockpile of all this stuff. But they're sitting there with it, and what are we going to do with all this stuff? You know, because of course the government's not going to buy it now. The war's over, and they noticed that that it generated heat, and they were seeing that popcorn was popping and food was cooking when they had it around this radar equipment. So they came out with the Amana radar range. Think about that.
Oh yeah, Amana, yes.
Radar range, and that was the first microwave.
Wow.
And
now people are reversing and they're quitting using their microwave.
Yeah, well, in Russia, I was reading about this. You know, and I wasn't reading about how, you know, Hillary or Trump or anybody was meeting with Russians. I was reading about that Russia banned the radar range, banned the use of microwave ovens. This people in Russia were like, well, we want microwaves, and whoever, Gorbachev or whoever was the leader at that time, he said, nope, we're not going to have it. They're dangerous. They're going to be proved to be dangerous. We're not going to let them in our country. Right? And isn't that something?
Yeah, well, the real mystery is a government that actually wants to protect its people. That's pretty cool.
Right? And yeah, they should have had a secret meeting. Somebody should have had a secret meeting back then, you know, and you know, maybe that's why Kennedy got shot, because they had a secret meeting and said, don't use radar ranges.
It could be. Who knows?
But you know, I mean, you think about it. What does it do? What does a microwave oven do? It destroys a lot of the natural bonds in the protein in the meat that you're cooking, and so I mean things like that, and it destroys the chemistry of the food, and it makes it so that your body doesn't recognize it as food. It's something else, and so that's the problem with it. And then you eat it, and well, guess what? It doesn't work like food anymore. And yeah.
And you have to wonder about, you know, like the change that occurs in the molecular structure, what it does in the body to cause inflammation also.
Yep. So it destroys that. It causes inflammation. It causes genetic changes in the people that eat that food then, and all these different things. And we don't even really know. I mean, like when you take a look at you know, a lot of these nutrients and stuff that are on the market. I mean, I was talking to a scientist one time, and he said that you know, at the good nutritional manufacturing plants like Sisel and some of the other ones, if a product comes in, if a raw ingredient, if an extract comes in and it doesn't meet the qualifications, like let's say that it's moldy, and you can guess that some of these extracts, they show up and they'll have box cars full of moldy product, and so the good labs like Sisel and some of the other better ones, they'll refuse to use it. They say, no, we're not going to use that. That's bad. And so what happens to that extract? Well, the extract company takes that and ships it to another lower quality company. And what they'll do is they'll hit it with radiation, basically hit it with microwave, and it kills the mold. And then they'll go ahead and use it in the product that they sell to people.
Well, I'm glad Sisel doesn't do that. I recently heard a video that whoever was doing the video said that he asked Tom once, he said, well, I know you guys quarantine all of your raw ingredients when they come in. He said, have you ever, like, shipped some back? You know, and Tom's response was hundreds of thousands of dollars worth. He says, I say, go sell that to those other companies. We don't want it here.
That's exactly it. That's what my friend that owns this other company said too, and that's exactly what they do. I mean, they won't use it, and you know, and the buyer beware. If you're buying a lesser product, or if that you know manufacturer doesn't know that it was moldy, and by the time it gets shipped to them, it's not moldy anymore because it was hit by radiation. That's what they make it out of, and that's what people are buying. I mean, that's why you really got to buy from a high quality company, somebody like Sisel.
Correct. I'm
Yeah.
super happy I found Sisel, because my last 6 years have been a journey of trying to remove toxins from my life and seeking out good products, and sometimes they're hard to find, for instance, just a toothpaste, that doesn't have fluoride in it. They're hard to find, and when I discovered Sisel through getting to know you, I was just blown away that they had so many non-toxic products. But what really impressed me was that Tom started this about 30 years ago. To be non-toxic and organic now is cool, right? But Tom did this 30 years ago. Like we were talking, most people didn't even understand toxins 30 years ago. And yet he started his mission to be non-toxic 30 years. So I'm super excited to have found it.
It really is exciting, isn't it, when you start thinking about it, that here we are. I mean, if you would have told me 10 years ago, Kurt, you're going to be using, you're going to be using organic, non-toxic shampoos and things like that, I mean, I probably would have laughed at you.
Yeah, right.
Right, because I would have thought, oh, come on, the FDA, they don't let stuff go in that's going to hurt you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
and we start thinking about it. I mean, think of all the stuff that's out there. I mean, you just look at sodium lauryl sulfate, right? I mean, it's in everything. SLS is in everything, and most laundry detergent is made with sodium lauryl sulfate. Well, guess what? I mean, most of the time you have clothes on. I mean, there's not very many times in your life, unless you're a nudist, that you don't have clothes on. And so if your clothes were washed in most laundry detergent, then you got the sodium lauryl sulfate up against your body all the time.
Right. And then, I mean, I just have devoured Tom's videos over the last 5 months, and some of them I've listened to, I think, 10 times. But when I listened to the one about personal care, and he was explaining about that and how it's in shampoos, and that when it goes into the body, it turns into dioxin. And I'm like, dioxin? That's Agent Orange stuff. That's what all our Vietnam vets are dying from now, And that's Roundup stuff, and I'm against Roundup. So I went around my house and looked at all my hair products and my hand soap, and there it was, second ingredient in almost everything in my house. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been putting this bad substance on my head almost daily, for years. So the buildup of time of doing that, is part of the reason we have a whole generation of people that are degenerate or, facing degenerations quicker than I think they did years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the truth too. And so, which moves us into the topic that I really want to talk about. I mean, healthy aging. I mean, here we are. We're both middle-aged. We both want to live long and healthy lives. But, I was hanging around with a friend of mine we've been friends since we were in kindergarten. And we started talking about that. And he said, it's just his memory isn't as sharp as it used to be, and it's gradually declining. His wife, who was about the same age as us, she said the same thing. I mean, she actually worked in a position with a major defense supplier for the United States Department of Defense. And I mean, some of the stuff that she does that she really, if she told you what she did, she'd have to kill you. That's the kind of job she had. And because of the high stress and everything like that, because of that, and she said that it was just she actually quit. She retired at a young age because she said her memory just wasn't as sharp as it used to be. She couldn't do her job as good as she used to.
Yeah. Well, almost everyone around our age is saying that. Like, I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, they have that disease that, what do they call it? DRS, don't remember stuff.
Right. Well, I've heard of a different one, but that one will work.
Sometimers disease, not Alzheimer's, but sometimers.
Right.
And we start thinking about it. I mean, that's one of the things that goes, and then people get stressed out because they can't remember. I mean, I know how I am. I mean, I'll tell you what, Andrew, my job as a doctor, one of the things that I tell people is that, I didn't get to go to work and kind of gradually get into it, and maybe by 10, 11 o'clock really get into the swing of things. I had patients waiting for me at 7:30 in the morning, and I mean, if you were that first patient, wouldn't you want me to be sharp as a tack at 7:30 in the morning, just as if you showed up at 11:30 in the morning? And so I had to be 100% 7:30 in the morning, and 7:30 at night I had to be 100%. I mean, I had to have 12-hour days that I was given 100% of that all the time.
Yeah, well, that would be important to me.
Right? I mean, when you're seeing a doctor, you want to know, and I don't think a lot of people think about that. They don't think, what if my doctor doesn't really get going until 3 in the afternoon? Maybe I should make a later afternoon appointment, right? And I don't think they think about that, but you really ought to, because I mean, most people, they go to their job and they're like, yeah, I'll get going about 10 after I have a couple cups of coffee.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am, so I wouldn't make a good doctor for sure.
But so over the course, after my motorcycle wreck, and I blame it on the wreck, I don't blame it on age, but over the course of the motorcycle wreck, the last 10 years, I noticed that gradually I didn't have that memory anymore. I couldn't remember things like I used to, and I was having to even make to-do lists for myself, like, say last night I would have had to make a list for myself to do this morning, and I get up about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I don't hit the snooze. I don't do that. I jump out of bed and I just start doing what I need to do, and I've never used do it lists or anything like that, and I started to have to do that, but I started a year ago. In August of last year, I went to a symposium, took some classes on anti-aging, and I heard about these ingredients, like the NAD and the R-lipoic acid and different things like that. And I started taking it because they said this is going to reverse the aging, and I started taking the raw ingredients, and I was spending somewhere between $125 to $150 a month over the course of the last year just on those products. And Andrea, I know I've shared this with you before, that I notice now that I've got it back. I can remember things that I mean, just like I'm 20 years old again.
That's awesome.
It's cool. It's cool.
And what can we do to bring this to the masses who need it?
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I mean, is that I really think that like what you're doing on Facebook, where you're just sharing with everybody, but now you got to get those people. You got to get them to share it, and you got to get people, everybody that's listening to this call. You got to get people to share that information, because it's not going to be on, you're not going to see Diane Sawyer, ABC News, saying, hey, here's something you want to take. It's a vitamin that makes your memory come back. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see 2020. You're not going to see, Dan Rather talking about it and these different people. You guess who you're going to see? You're going to see people like Kurt, Andrea, and Helen, and DW, and Chris, and Nellie, and Katie, and Trevor, and I mean, just everybody's going to be, this is it. You are the anti-aging mass media. We are that army.
That's really exciting.
It really is. And what I like about it is that, you know, we were talking about earlier in the call that when we get to be 96 years old and we're hanging around with people, I mean, I'm going to be looking over them and say, hey, Andrea, how you doing? I'm going to be 96 years old, and I'm still going to remember your name, and I'm still going to have my knees, and so I can get up and down, and we can go hang out on the beach and just have some fun, right? We'll be those old people on the beach and still remembering stuff. You know, here's the problem, and I was telling Tom this. I said that, you know, the people that aren't paying attention to what we're talking about, in 20 years, guess what they're going to be saying?
I wish I had listened.
Yep, that's exactly it. I wish I had listened to you. What was that stuff you were talking about 20 years ago?
Right. I was talking to a girl yesterday, and she says, is that even, you know, I said, yeah, you know, they've come up with this discovery, not one anti-aging researcher, but a handful of them over the last about 7 years have all discovered the same thing, that when you supplement with these unique super nutrients, you know, you can be like your age 20 again. And she's like, and I said, you're going to stop aging and reverse age. And she goes, is that even possible? And I said, I didn't believe it either. And then I went and looked, and I looked up all the research, and I went, oh my gosh, this is true. You know, and then she says, well, if you're not going to die from old age, what are you going to die from? And I said, parachuting, bungee jumping, mountain climbing.
Right? Right? That's the cool part, is that I don't want to die from natural causes. I don't want people to say, oh, yeah, he died from old age.
Right.
No way. I want to be that guy that they go, I don't know, he was crazy. He was 101 years old, and he jumped out of an airplane.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's almost impossible for a lot of people, like people who are listening to this call for maybe the first time. You know, it's got to be a little bit unbelievable for them, because, like, when Tom announced this almost, 6-7 weeks ago, I had, gotten to know Tom's values and morals and personality through, listening to him talk. And when he announced this, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. It kind of threw my brain into tilt, because I thought, what is he talking about? Because I didn't think he would make the statements he was making if it wasn't true. And that's what drove me to do the research and discover this wonderful thing that's been, been happening. And, the thing is, I do follow a lot of health information, and, like, this came right out of left field for me, because I hadn't heard anything about this. You've been to anti-aging conferences and heard about these different substances for a few years now, but I hadn't heard anything about it. So it really was a mind-blowing experience for me to learn that.
Right? And it's just all of a sudden you start hearing about it, and then you start meeting new people that have heard about it, and all of a sudden it starts to make sense.
Yeah. Like you buy a certain kind of car, and then all of a sudden you see them everywhere, right?
Yep. Yeah, I decided to, that's exactly what I was going to say. I decided to fix up a 55 Studebaker, and I was reading up on them, and they said, oh, if you find one that's not rusty, wow. And think about that with humans, too. If you find one that's not rusty, and that's pretty cool. I mean, we're going to be the non-rusty humans.
How about that? At my age, being a single woman now, I kind of have to do a health interview with anybody I date, because it's like, okay, I'm taking care of myself, but have you been taking care of yourself?
Right? Yeah, because you don't want to waste your time on somebody that's going to be dead in 5 years.
Well, I don't want to wipe drool up and push a wheelchair. So.
Right? Yeah. It's it's really fun, I'm out here, as we're talking, and I'm out here playing fetch with my dog, and he's an 8-year-old lab, and what's really cool is that he still acts like he's 3, because he's using these same products that you and I are talking about.
I was actually going to ask you that. I have someone who has become a member, and ordered the age pill, and she has, I believe, she said a 13-year-old dog, and she said, I want to give this to my dog. So how much do you think we should give to a dog?
Well, you don't have to give as much because of the fact that animals respond so much quicker, so much better, and because their systems, they don't feed animals all the processed food that we give people.
Oh, that's true.
Right? I mean, like, I go give my dog like a potato chip, and he looks at me, he gives me this look like, what are you doing? I won't eat that. Right? I go,
Sure.
I pull, when we're traveling, he travels with me a lot, and we'll go through a drive-through, and I'll order him a cheeseburger and French fries, and he looks at the French fries, and he's like, no, I don't want those. But he won't eat a salad either.
Well,
So,
he's a carnivore, so we don't expect him to eat salad, right?
He's just spoiled. Anyhow, here we are at the bottom of the hour, Andrea. Didn't that go fast?
Yes.
And, when I asked you to be on the call this morning, you're like, well, how long do we have to be on it? I mean, I just tell people 30 minutes goes way too fast. And so we're gonna try and put together some calls. You and I are going to do some calls on how to share this and get this information out to the masses and let them know what you're doing. Because, I mean, last week or a couple weeks ago, you started sharing this with people, and your results of sharing have been crazy good. Some of the best I've seen.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was a surprise to me too, but I think it's the uniqueness of the product and what it has to offer. And people, once they hear the information so that they can make an informed decision, they're like, yeah, I want to try this. Because in my head, it's like, who wouldn't want to try this?
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I tell people, and I'm sure you do too, is that if you're going to try it, I don't like the word try, I mean, like Yoda would say, try. There is no try. Do.
Okay.
You just do. Just do, not try. And so I'm going to do this product. I'm going to do it for, I tell people, do it for 90 days and give it a really, really good shot and make sure that you're doing the right amount. I mean, you want to take the right dosage for your age and things like that. If you've already got some memory issues, double it up. Don't take the same amount that a 20-year-old takes because you're going to need more. So
correct. Yeah,
anyhow,
I'm doing that. Most of the people that have decided to order with me are doing that.
Perfect. All right. Well, Andrea, thanks for being on the call. We'll knock this off here, and for everybody that's listening to the call or listening to the recording, thanks for taking the time and just kind of a casual conversation, myself and Andrea, and we'll have her back on. So, Andrea, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate you inviting me.
All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Have a great Sisel day.